Hi comic book fans, and welcome to another suddenlycomics.com video. Pull the camera a bit closer. Right, I have just been into central London, driven in there to pick up 11 comics from CGC. So I went to the CGC offices in London to pick these up. These are a set of comics that I submitted in I think sort of beginning of November. So we're at the end of January, so it's not too bad. 2 months, just over 2 months for a turnaround. They've got to fly them all out to the States, grade them, fly them all back again. So pretty good. And you know, CGC in the UK are very helpful. I got the invoices for this, and I then said, can you offset my CGC fees against this CGC submission, and they did that. So if you are going to get a number of slabs done, I do recommend you join CGC, because you can do 100% offset of your fees against your grading costs. Right, so I've split this little pile of 11 comics into 3 piles. The first pile is Friends. So I've actually had 2 comics graded for Friends. I've then got some comics, some I've graded for selling, and then some I've had graded for my own PC. So I'm going to do the 2 first for Friends. Now the first one is, so when it's a friend, is a guy who's bought a lot from me on Whatnot, a chap called Craig. I was doing a Whatnot show, obviously sometime in, I think it was in October actually, I showed a comic, and I sort of said, I think this is a CGC 9.8 candidate. Anyway, Craig bought it, and then he said, can you get it CGC'd for me? So I've been really nervous about this one, having said that I thought it was a potential 9.8. I was probably more nervous about this one than any of the others. However, this did come from an auction purchase last year, where I've had 2 of the comics graded from it, and they both came back 9.8. So I was relatively confident, and indeed I am delighted to say that Craig's comic that he bought from me on my Whatnot show, that I said was a CGC 9.8 candidate, has indeed come back as a CGC 9.8. It's one of my favourite Dave Stevens comics, because it's got this great bit in it with Betty Page. So I will be handing that over to Craig at the London Comic Mart this coming Sunday. So really relieved. Having said I thought it was a potential CGC 9.8, it's come back as a CGC 9.8. So that is great. Right, the next one is from my mate Wayne. So I met up with Wayne, he's also known as Sacred Comics. I met up with Wayne at the Thought Bubble convention in November. And he had a comic that he'd bought. He'd asked my opinion on it. I said I thought it was worth getting it CGC'd. When he bought it as a 1.0. I looked at it, and he asked whether I could clean and press it, and I looked at it, and I got it home, and I said, no, I don't want to touch this. It's very, very fragile. I actually thought it was probably a 1.5, 1.8. Anyway, I am delighted to say for Wayne that this has come back as a 2.5, and it looks really great in the slab. This is a type of comic that should be graded, right? Okay, because when this was raw, I was frightened to touch this or even look at it. But now it's in a slab, it looks much more solid. You can actually hold it without worrying it's going to fall apart. And not only that, it has come back as a 2.5. It is Joe Palooka, #1, Volume 2, from 1945. So congratulations, Wayne. I think you've got a cracking little slab there. and I think it was absolutely the right thing to do to get that slabbed. This is the type of comic you should get slabbed because you preserved it. The slab is acting as a mechanism of preservation for this comic for future generations. So, cracker there for Wayne. I'll be sending that off to him in the post probably tomorrow. Right, okay, now then, we're going to come to some comics that I've got graded in order to sell. Okay, a couple of years ago, I found I'd had a great buy from Ireland where it was like a sort of warehouse find. And I bought about 10 copies of Dragon's Lair #1. Now this is a rare comic. It was a very low print run by a company called CrossGen MV Creations in 2003, and it's based on the Dragon's Lair video game, which was in universities when I was in university. So it was one of the first ever sort of animated video games. Absolutely impossible to do. Anyway, I picked up 11 copies of this at a really low price. I've sold a couple of them on Raw, and I decided at last to get one graded. And it's come back a 9.0, which is what I thought. I was hoping maybe for a 9.2, but it's come back a 9.0. Right, amongst the great looking cover, and that's worth a fair amount of money because this is quite rare. There are rumours, there have been rumours for some time of Ryan Reynolds starring in a Dragon's Lair movie. Haven't come to fruition yet, but you never know. The artist here is Don Bluth, who did the artwork on the video game. Right, now in the sort of mini warehouse find that I got of this, there was one which had a different coloured cover. This one is the standard cover, it's sort of all red all over. And anyway, I had one which was non-standard. So I sent it off to CGC and I said, I think this is a print error. Anyway, they have confirmed it. Actually, it's come back at 9.4. I thought this was a 9.0 as well. So this has come back at 9.4. They've given it a green label. I'm not too worried about that. What they've said is manufactured with uneven ink on the colour. I don't know if you can see this, but this top part of this cover is not. Can you see the top here? It's grey, not blue. There's some ink missing. So this is a very rare. I have never seen another one of these. This is a unique comic. It is a printer's error on Dragon's Lair #1. Now I don't know what to do with this. There are collectors of these sort of printing error type comics. I might put it into Heritage. I might get some value for it there. I'm not entirely sure. Right, next up. Now this was one of my. We've got a couple of comics here which were great finds during last year. Now this one is very special. Let me show you this. Okay, so it is a small comic. Can you see it's in a big slab, but it's a small comic, and it's called it's March of Comics, and March of Comics number 285. I bought a bundle of these, I think for about £3 each. I got them and I was looking them up, and they're worth, I don't know, three to £10 each. But when I looked this one up, there was a copy at my comic shop for sale at $500. Okay, and when I looked into it, this is Astro Boy from 1966. Now, Astro Boy was one of the first ever manga characters in Japan. And for the longest period of time, he never came over to the States. There are 2 comics from the 1960s, 2 only, that feature Astro Boy. One is a gold key comic, and it sells for quite a lot of money, and there are quite a lot on the census. This is the other one, okay? So there were only 2 Astro Boy US comics. Now, this one is much, much rarer than the Gold Key comic. There are only about 8 or 9 of these on the CGC census, and I think there are only 2 in a higher grade than this. Now the one that sold at my comic shop I think was a 6.0 that sold for $500. These are really hard to find. I suspect this could go for a reasonable amount of money at Heritage. So I think this is going to Heritage, unless somebody wants to make me an offer. Rare comic. The only second US appearance of Astro Boy, and it is rare. Right, much rarer than the Gold Key comic. And as I say, pick that up for about a $5. I think it could be worth $500 plus. Okay, so that's going up for sale. Next up, if you watch my videos regularly, you will have seen me showing my best auction win of last year, when I went to a auction house that doesn't usually do comics, and I found this horrible mouldy old box of comics, described as a box of comics, and in it there was this. Okay, now I paid 300 quid for this box of comics, and there were about 50 Silver Age comics in it, all fairly decent. But then I found this one in the box, and I cleaned and pressed it myself, and I sent it off to CGC, and I thought it was a 4.0, and indeed it has come back as a 4.0. It is Fantastic Four number 49. I'm hoping to be able to get between £300 and £400 for this. With the Fantastic Four movie coming up this year, I'm intending to put this on eBay, I think, at around £300 to £400. It is, of course, the first full appearance of Galactus, the second appearance of the Silver Surfer, and it is the first Galactus and Silver Surfer cover, and in my opinion, one of the top 10 comic covers of all time. So that was a fantastic, and I paid about a $5 for this as well. So there you go. You got 2 comics that last year. These were my 2 little gems from my auction winners last year. And this one has got the Fantastic Four special label on it as well, which I really like. I do like these special labels. They're not all available at the right time, but when I did this submission, they did have this Fantastic Four special label. So there you go. There's my £5 Fantastic Four number 49, first Galactus and Silver Surfer cover. Absolute cracker, and that will be going on eBay, I think. Right, so we're still on comics I'm going to sell, and again, this is worth getting graded. This was worth getting done, because raw I would probably have got £100 to £150 for this. Graded I can probably get 300 plus, so well worth grading that one. Right, this next one is a comic. I can't even remember where I got this from. I think it came in a random auction lot 2 or 3 years ago, because I don't go out and buy this comic. So this has come my way by accident. I won't have paid very much for it. But I thought if I sell this raw, I'll probably get 30 quid for it, 40 quid. If I get it slabbed, I might get a bit more for it. I thought it was an 8.5. And indeed it has come back an 8.5, so that's perfect. It's Transformers number 1. I think it's worth about 100 quid in an 8.5, so probably worth getting graded. And I've probably got 30 to 40 for it, raw. I've spent 30 to 40 getting it graded, so, you know, and I could probably shift it for 100 or so. So, you know, was probably worth getting graded. Again, I'll put that one on eBay, and I'll probably show it on my Whatnot shows as well. Right, okay, so those are the comics I've had graded to sell. Now we're going to come to the final section, which is comics that I've graded for my PC. Okay, here is a comic that I've been after for a long time. I finally managed to pick one of these up in an auction last year. Now I paid the fair market value for this. So if I'm buying comics to sell, I generally try and pay for less than half fair market value. If I'm buying for comics for my personal collection, I will pay up to fair market value. Now, this was in an auction raw, and it was sold as a 4.0. I got it and I thought a 4.0 was about right. I did clean and press it, and I was hoping it was going to come back a higher grade than a 4.0, but I wasn't confident. And indeed, it has come back a 4.0. So that's fine. It is Avengers number 57. Of course, the first appearance of Vision. A great, one of my favourite comic covers of all time. I have this in the Alan Class version. I think it's in a 7.0, my Alan Class version. So at some stage I will show you the original version and the Alan Class version together, so you can compare the two and see why Alan Class is superior. That's a bias there. Okay, this next comic is one that I've had. This was one of my attic comics, as I call them, that I collected back in the 80s. When I got my collection out and had a look at it, I would have paid some £2 or £3 for this in the 80s, okay, or 90s. It would have been in the 80s, yeah, late 80s. I think I might even have bought this new off the rack. It has since become a classic. It is Batman 423. So this has been sitting in my collection forever. I thought this was going to come back a 7075. So 70 is at the low end of where I wanted it to be. But you know, it's a really nice comic. I paid virtually nothing for it. I am a Batman collector. This is a pretty major Batman comic. So that will be staying in my PC. Right, next up, two of my favourites here. These, those of you who watch my show will know I collect Brave and the Bold, and I've only got about 3 or 4 to get, and they're all in the sort of teens, early 20s. Now, over the last 18 months, I'd knocked 2 off the list. Okay, they were both raw copies. And with them both, I bought this first one. I bought as a 4.0. Okay, so I bought as a graded 4.0. Sorry, as a raw 4.0. Okay, now I'm really pleased with this because I cleaned and pressed this. I did it myself, and I am absolutely delighted to say this has come back as a 5.5. It is Brave and the Bold, number 12. There are only 40 of these on the CGC census, and there are only 17 higher graded than this one. So there you go. This is the 18th highest graded copy of this in the world. They are really difficult to get, these ones. They don't come up very often at all. People who've got them keep them. So this coming back as a 5.5 when I bought it as a 4.0, and I pressed and cleaned this. I'm absolutely over the moon about this grading. It's an absolute cracking copy. Really nice, and a big bargain on this one. Right, now I think it was this one that was from the my comic colleague network. So somebody in the States, I think it was, who was it? I think it was Joe Burjo. Knew I was looking for one of these, and he contacted Alan and said, I'm at a comic convention. They've got a Brave and the Bold here, raw. Is it one of the ones Mark wants? Alan contacted me. He said, it's Brave and the Bold 12. I said, yes. He said, it's up for $150, but I think I can get it for $100. So he bought it for $100. He shipped it to me. I obviously paid him for it. It's come back at 5.5. That's worth a lot more than $100. It was certainly not leaving my hands for anything. Well, it's not leaving my hands at all. This will only leave the Oldroyd family possession after I have left this mortal coil. Right. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one is another Brave and the Bold. This one I'm absolutely delighted with as well. Now this one I bought raw, and I think I bought it raw as a 3035, okay. It has got some colour rub on the cover, and I thought this is probably below my sort of minimum grade I'm looking for is about a 4045. Anyway, I took this, I cleaned and pressed this one as well, and I was delighted when this came back as a 50. This was bought as a 35, and it does have, but it looks fantastic in the slab. It looks better in the slab. It does have, look, fairly significant colour rub on it, on the cover. But it's come back as a 50, which I am stunned about. Yeah, a VG Fine, Brave and the Bold, number 19. It's Joe Kubert cover art. No, sorry, Irv Novick cover art. Joe Kubert is on the internals. Viking Prince and Silver Knight. Brave and the Bold, number 19. Okay, that's going into the PC. That is going nowhere. That's your lot. That is the 11 comics I have just picked up from CGC in London. I didn't submit anything. I hadn't had the time to put together a CGC submission. If I'm going to put a CGC submission together, I like to make sure I've cleaned and pressed everything. I've worked out whether it's CGC, whether it's worth CGCing or everything. So I think it's going to be another month or so before I'm ready to do another CGC submission. But really pleased with that lot. Really pleased for Craig with his 9.8. Really pleased for Wayne with his 2.5. And the stars of my show there are that little March of Comics as a 7.0, and those two, which I'm going to sell on, and those two Brave and the Bolds at a 5.5 and a 5.0, purchased as a 4.5 and a 3.5, gone up a grade and a half due to my magnificent cleaning and pressing. Right, that's your lot. See ya again soon.